All right. How are we doing, ladies and gentlemen? It is officially week 6. We are back for the 6th episode of the Care Bear Fantasy Football Weekly Recap. Now, today's episode is going up a little late. It is Friday today, so we did unfortunately miss Thursday Night Football last night, but nonetheless, we will talk about it. But aside from that, let's get into our usual scores. Top players, bottom players, missed starts, a little bit of injury news, which is going to be a little more in-depth this time since it is Friday and the league board. But before all that, let's get a week recap from this week in the NFL, week 6. Thursday night, we had a high-power matchup. The Bears played the Commanders. And just like the last couple Thursday night footballs, not talking about week 7s, this one was a snooze fest. The Bears lost to the Commanders 12-7. Brian Robinson had 60 yards and a touchdown. Love to see that from him coming back from being shot. Also for the Commanders, Carson Wentz is going to miss a couple weeks as he broke a finger on his throwing hand. As for the Bears, they somehow managed 237 rushing yards as a team, all between Fields, Herbert, and Montgomery. But they got no touchdowns on the ground, so none of them ran it in. But we did see a Dante Pettis breakout game. That's a surprise, to say the least, seeing as he hasn't caught a pass since week 1. But anyways, maybe he's someone we can count on. On to the Sunday games. We start with the Falcons beating the Niners 28-14, where Marcus Mariota saw flashes of Oregon playing almost a perfect game. He went 13 for 14 with 180 yards total. Not a crazy stat line, but efficient. And he had 3 touchdowns, 1 on the ground. And then Kyle Pitts, he finally did it. We have a touchdown on American soil for the man. But his stat line still leaves a lot to desire. He only had 3 catches for 20 yards. Take away that touchdown, he has 5 points again. So who knows what's going on with him. He was supposed to be that, upper echelon tight end, and he just has not proved it. As for the Niners, it was a great day for the 3 big names outside, but they couldn't get it done. Ayuk had a good day with 8 for 83 and 2 touchdowns. Kittle had 8 for 83 as well, no touchdowns, and then Debo had 9 for 90, and then we do have some big news for the Niners coming up in a little bit. Next, we had the Patriots going against the Browns, and who would have guessed? The Browns' incompetent coaching staff lost them another game. I mean, this looked like a surefire win for the Browns. The Browns, even though they have been playing with Jacoby Brissett, they don't have their $200 million quarterback. They have been playing good, and they have been playing good behind Nick Chubb. They lost. They got blown out, 15-38. A third-string quarterback, Bailey Zappi, had 309 for 2, and he spaced it out. He was slinging it. 4 receivers had over 60 yards. Meanwhile, behind him, Ramondre Stevenson's season, he had 23 touches for 91 and 2 touchdowns. And then as we're saying for the Browns, the games that you're in is because of Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb only had 13 touches. That's a joke. I mean, I understand you're losing, but get him the ball. He is your offense right now. You don't have that star quarterback. You shouldn't be throwing 40 passes a game. And your number 1 running back, who is arguably one of the best in the league, if not, only getting 13 touches is awful. But anyways, Donovan Peoples-Jones on the outside did have 4 for 74, which is something you like to see for the young guy. On to the New York Football Jets beating the Green Bay Frauds 27-10. Breece Hall is that guy. He had 22 touches, 120 yards, and a touchdown. Meanwhile, the true MVP of the game, Quinnen Williams, he had 2 sacks, a forced fumble, and a blocked field goal. Meanwhile, Aaron Rodgers' search for a receiver 1 grows, as this week it was Robert Tonyan. He led the Packers with 10 for 90. Every week he's just, forcing a different guy, trying to figure it out, and it is not going well. Also, Lazard had 4 for 76 and a touchdown. Lazard has been putting up stat lines like that every week. It seems like he's not getting too many catches, but he's getting yards, and he's managing a touchdown. How long can he keep that up? Because the touchdowns really are salvaging the performance. Who knows? Then we have the Colts and the Jags already playing their second game against each other this year. The Colts did it. The Colts beat the Jags. The Colts historically struggle against the Jazz, at least very recently. They won 34-27, but it costed all of Matt Ryan's arm. He threw 58 passes. He is too old for that. But Michael Pittman had 13 catches for 134. Meanwhile, the third string running back, Deion Jackson, had 22 touches for 120 and a touchdown. This is a little alarming because it kind of just shows running backs don't matter. Like, I understand there's guys, Austin Eckler, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, like they're guys, but this is a third string running back getting 120 yards, touchdown, and he was this week's RB1. That's something to talk about. These guys come from nowhere and they just take over. As for the Jags, Trevor Lawrence had 3 total touchdowns, 2 of those on the ground, funny enough. And then while the running back room behind him, it just keeps getting murky. At the start of the year, it was just all J-Rob, but now ETN, he didn't out-touch him this game. It was 12-13 in favor of J-Rob, only 1 touch difference. But ETN with 108 yards on his 12, as opposed to J-Rob, who only had 55 for his 13. It is only week 6, so that's something to keep an eye on. But as the year goes on, you would expect to see a little more ETN, seeing as he is the younger guy who they spent a higher draft pick on. Then we had Kirk Cousins in the noon slate doing what he does. He led the Vikings to a 24-16 win over the Dolphins practice squad. Dalvin Cook had 83 yards and a touchdown, most of that just coming off his one big breakaway run. Meanwhile, Jefferson on the outside had 107 of Kirk Cousins' 175 yards. He basically was the passing offense. As for the Dolphins, they started the game with Skylar Thompson, but what has seemingly happened every single week, their starting QB went down. Teddy B came back to relieve. Last week he was the starter and Skylar Thompson relieved. This week it was opposite. But Teddy B came in to relieve. He played an all-right game, given the Miami pass catchers great stats, but it just wasn't enough. And those stats were Tyreek, he had 12 for 177. Waddle had 6 for 130. And Mike, unseasoned gritty Gesicki, had 6 for 69 and 2 touchdowns. That man was going crazy. Then we had Who Dey going against Who Dat Nation. The Bengals beat the Saints 30-26, and I think we can officially say the Super Bowl hangover is over. Joey B had 325 and 4 touchdowns, while his main man, Jamar Chase, had 7 for 132 and 2. But something we want to note is Joe Mixon only had 12 touches for 68 yards. Round 1 running back, that's not a great stat line, but he did salvage his fantasy day with a touchdown. As for the Saints, Andy Dalton did what he could with his top 3 pass catchers all being out. But it wasn't enough. Though we will mention Alvin Kamara managed 125 yards on 25 touches. Then, what seems like classic Ravens football this year, they choke another fourth quarter lead. They lost 20-24 against the New York Football Giants. They are 5-1. Talk about unexpected. Kenyon Drake did have 120 yards and a touchdown. Something to point out with J.K. Dobbins. He is getting a surgery and is expected to be out a couple weeks here. So maybe Kenyon Drake takes over that backfield. Maybe Justice Hill is there. Who knows? And then Mark Andrews, Lamar Jackson's favorite guy, had 7 for 106 and a touchdown. As for the Giants, they play through Saquon. And what did they do? They played through Saquon. He had 25 touches, 95, and a touchdown. Meanwhile, Danny Dimes didn't play bad himself. He had 173 yards, 2 touchdowns, and his only turnover was a bad fumble coming at the halftime Hail Mary. Then we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What happened? You lost to a team with half of the players out. The Steelers win 20-18 behind both Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett. Each of them threw a touchdown in that game. Pickett unfortunately left early due to a concussion, while the team's big pass catchers for the day were, for Sunday, was Chase Claypool. He had 7 for 96 and a touchdown. That receiver room is very talented, very crowded with Johnson, Claypool, and Pickens, but today was led by Claypool. He had 7 for 96 and a touchdown, like we said. He actually is a name that is looked at on the trade market around the league, so he might not even be with the Steelers coming up soon, but again, that has not happened yet, and that is all just speculation. Meanwhile, for the Bucs, they struggled everywhere. It just was not a great game for them, but Chris Godwin is looking good to go. He had 6 for 95, and then Lenny, of course, got his touches in. He had 27 for 100 and a touchdown, all while Tom Brady had his usual meltdown on the sideline yelling at his O-line. Love to see that. Then we're going to move on to the afternoon games. The Panthers, they surrendered to the Rams. They lost 24-10. This game was a wash. Carolina did not complete a single pass past the line of scrimmage, and that pissed off Robbie Anderson. He had something to say about it. He was in the receiver coach's face, then he was in the head coach's face, interim head coach, and now he's in Arizona. He basically forced his way off of that team. But in that dump-off offense behind P.J. Walker at QB, C-Mac thrived. He had 20 touches for 170, and he is no longer on the Panthers. Something to talk about. He did get traded to the Niners. Big news. We'll talk a little more on that. But anyways, Carolina's only touchdown was on the defensive side. Meanwhile, the Rams, they might have solved racism. Allen Robinson had 5 for 63 and a touchdown. They got him the ball. But still not enough. Only 5 catches for a guy that they spent a bag on. They want to see more out of that. Cooper Kupp, he still did his thing. He had 7 for 80. And then we have some running back controversy in L.A. Cam Akers is reported to have played his last game in L.A. They are looking to trade him ASAP. So it looks like Darrell Henderson will be manning that backfield. And there is reports of Kyren Williams, once he is uninjured, coming back and having a big role, but we will see. Then we had a battle of the birds. Seahawks beat the Cardinals 19-9, and these birds did everything but fly. This was a ground-heavy game. Kenny Walker had 110 and a touchdown. And then the leading rusher for the Cardinals, not Eno Benjamin, this week's waiver wire pickup, big name waiver wire pickup. It was actually Kyler Murray. He had 100 on the ground, just scrambling around, running around like he does. But other than that, this game was boring. Just old school, smash mouth, running the football. Then our game of the week was the Bills and the Chiefs. The Bills won this game on a last-second touchdown from Josh Allen to Dawson Knox, 24-20. Josh Allen balled out like he does. He had 329 and 3 touchdowns, thrown to his favorite target, Stephon Diggs. He had 10 for 148 and a touchdown. Meanwhile, the Chiefs, they fought the entire game. Juju finally produced a good game. He had 5 for 113 and a touchdown. And then Kelsey, of course, produced. He had 8 for 108. But Patrick Mahomes lost the game. He threw the game-sealing interception while they were trying to make that game-winning drive. And lastly, for Sunday, the Eagles, they stayed undefeated, 6-0. They beat the Cowboys 26-17 in what is most likely Cooper Rush's last game as a starter, barring any more injuries for Dak. The Eagles had a real balanced game all around. No big fantasy plays, but A.J. Brown did lead pass catchers with 5 for 67 and a touchdown. And then Sanders led the way on the ground with 71 and a touchdown. Meanwhile, the Cowboys, Cooper Rush, like I said, he played a good defense and he got exposed. He is a backup quarterback. He is not that guy. We were all wrong. He had 3 interceptions, but the Cowboys were led by Zeke, who had 81 on the ground and a touchdown. And then to end the week, we had another Broncos primetime game. Please take them off the air. No one wants to see these guys. It is awful every time they touch the field. But the Chargers beat the Broncos 19-16 on Dustin Hopkins' broken leg. That guy was crumbling after every kick he took. But, he won it. He is the hero. He was coming out there limping, but he still banged it home every single time. As for some of the skill players, Austin Eckler managed 83 yards on 24 touches and he got a touchdown. Meanwhile, Mike Williams had his classic roller coaster as he is hitting the bottom this week. He had a terrible game. And then as for the Broncos, running back controversy, just like in LA, as we all know, Javonte Williams did tear his ACL. He is out for the year, so seemingly that is Melvin Gordon's job to lose, and it looks like it is lost. He had 3 carries for 8 yards and did not play after the first quarter. Latavius Murray, he took over. Sight from the past. Love to see it. We will see what goes on as time passes, but apparently Nathaniel Hackett and Melvin Gordon had a good conversation. Who knows? On to the points this week. Per normal, we're going to start with the Shit King. And per normal, it is Ryan. Once again, his 4th appearance as the Shit King in only 6 weeks. That is not good. He only had 84.4 points. 7 of his 10 players failed to reach double digits. And then on top of those 7, 6 of the 7 didn't surpass 5. It was a rough week for him. But he did not break this year's low. This year's low, again, is 83.8. So he's only 0.6 off there, but that record low is set by Ryan anyways, so it's not like it matters. He would have had the record regardless. That was week 4, by the way, that record-setting low game. And then our opposite of him, the top scorer this week was Bailey with 178.8, with 7 of his 10 players scoring 15 or more, but it was not enough to break the yearly record of 194.8 set by myself. Now we go on to this week's blowout of the week, and yes, the Shit King is involved. Craig beat Ryan 131.4 to 84.4. That's a difference of 47 points. Not able to crack the 93-point blowout that Ryan actually had over Johnny. That is... How are you Shit King 4 or 6 weeks, but one of the weeks you won, you blew someone out by 93. That is beyond me. You are one of the most inconsistent rosters I have seen. But maybe you'll get it together. And then our matchup of the week, we had a good one. Andrew beat Jews 126.8 to 126.1. That is a 0.7 difference. 1 point changes this game. That is our game of the year, and it most likely will be for the rest of the year. That was an insane matchup all the way through to Monday night. The other matchups we had was Bailey beating Johnny 178.8 to 169. That was a high-scoring, tight game. And then Reggie beat Tom 131.2 to 112.2. Now we're going to go on to our top scorers this week. And at QB, we have Joe Burr. He had 32.5. Following behind him was Matt Ryan with 27.2 and Josh Young with 26.4. And with the running backs, like we said earlier, third string running back for the Colts, Deion Jackson, RB1, 28.1. And right behind him at RB2 was Ramondre Stevenson at 25.1. Some weird names in the top 2 running backs this week. And then at receiver, we had quite a lot of guys. Jamar Chase was receiver 1 with 32.2. His quarterback was QB1, so it makes sense. And then behind him, Stephon Diggs, 30.8. Tyreek Hill, 29.7. Ayuk, 28.3. And then Pittman Jr. had 26.4. Then our tight end number 1 was the gritty god, Mike Gesicki. He had 24.9, and right behind him, Mark Andrews had 23.6. And then our defense of the week, the New York Football Jets, more like Quinnen Williams. He put up all those points by himself. He was going nuts against Aaron Rodgers. They had 21, and not too far behind was the Cardinals with 15. Now, the exact opposite. As we do, we have the lows of the week, and we all know we're only highlighting the players that got started. We're not talking about guys on the bench. We're not talking about guys on the waivers because they are there for a reason. And then we're not going to talk about players who dealt with injuries, so you might not hear some names, but that is because they got hurt, and that is just not fair to them. Our bottom QB this week, and one of the only QBs started to score under 10, Golden Boy, Justin Herbert, 8.4. He was playing the Broncos on Monday night, and I think the Broncos are just cursed. Whoever plays them is going to play just as bad as they do. And then at the running backs, we had quite a lot of names who didn't even make double digits, so we're just going to list them all off. At the bottom, though, Jeff Wilson, 0.5. Melvin Gordon, 0.8. J.K. Dobbins, 1.5. He did get hurt, but he played a majority of the game. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 3.3. James Robinson, 6.5. Aaron Jones, 7.4. Nick Chubb, 8. Montgomery, 9. And A.J. Dillon with 9.2. A lot of big names on there, a lot of low scores. Don't like seeing that. Then at receiver, we have Devin Duvernay with only 2.4. I don't know who decided to start that guy. Cortland Sutton with 3.4. DJ Moore with 3.7. Mike Williams, 3.7. Tyler Lockett, 3.7. DK Metcalf, 5.4. Mike Evans, 8.2. Terry McLaurin, 8.2. And Deontay Johnson, 8.6. Again, a lot of big names you see on this list. That is something that is not familiar for us to see and is not a sight that we want to see. Then coming in at tight end, we have Tyler Higbee at 1.7, Goddard at 4.2, and Hayden Hurst at 5.1. And then, as we say every week, defense wins championships. So it doesn't look good for Jacksonville. They had -4, and not too far behind. Cincinnati had 0. Now we're going to look at some big names, big days that sat the bench. We're talking about any players who scored over 20 or were a top 10 player at their position for the week. Starting off, Ryan benched the receiver 4, Brandon Ayuk. He had 28.3. He benched tight end 1, Mike Gesicki with 24.9. And QB 10, Jimmy G with 16.9. Then Reggie went ahead and benched tight end 5, George Kittle. QB 5, Marcus Mariota. And receiver 6, Chase Claypool. And lastly, the only one to bench a top player was Bailey benching receiver 7, Juju Smith-Schuster. Now we're going to take a quick look at our entire league as a whole. We are looking with a face of disappointment because we got a lot of studs sitting on the waiver wire. QBs 7, 8, and 9, Justin Fields, Bailey Zappi, Teddy Bridgewater. Running back 7, Kenyon Drake. Receivers 8, 9, 10, Tyquan Thornton, Paris Campbell, Dante Pettis. Then we got tight ends 6, 7, 9, Hunter Henry, Daniel Bellinger, and Jake Ferguson. All these guys, top 10 this week in their position. And you know where they are? The waiver wire. Go pick them up. Now we're going to get on to injuries. And with it being Friday, we have a little bit of better knowledge going into the week as opposed to Tuesdays. So some practices have been had, and we will hopefully know a little more about who's in, who's out. So the Cardinals-Saints game did get played, but anyways, we're going to talk about Marquise Brown. He's going to be expected to be out for 6 weeks. He did get placed on IR. You hate to see that. He was having a great year. And then we mentioned Cam Akers earlier. They are on bye this week, but we are just more focused on the fact that he is expected to have played his last game in LA, and he is supposedly going to see the door. And then Mike Thomas was out Thursday night. Again, that game already happened, but that's something to point out. He has not played since week 3. He is supposed to be a big name coming back from injury this past season, but he has only played 3 weeks, and it's not something you like to see. Then Carson Wentz, he is going to be out at least a single week after getting surgery on a broken finger on his throwing hand. We'll see if that happens to be more or if it's only the 1 week, but it probably will be a little more. Then, as we said, J.K. Dobbins, he's also expected out 4 to 6 weeks. He is scheduled for a knee surgery next week. Hunter Renfrow, questionable for Sunday. Russell Wilson, questionable for Sunday. DeAndre Swift, questionable for Sunday. Keenan Allen, game time decision on Sunday. Are you serious? It has been 6 weeks since he pulled the hammy. Brian Robinson got shot twice, and he missed 4. What are you doing? Get on the field. The Chargers need help. The Chargers are falling behind. Rashad Bateman also questionable for Sunday. Tyler Lockett is said to have a very good chance to play Sunday. Darren Waller is out Sunday. Jalen Waddle questionable. Mark Andrews questionable. Now we're going to take a quick look on our league board. We got a new face this week. We have Jews. He said, I want to win so bad. Jews is one of the worst teams in the league right now, sitting at 1-5. Jews, I hope you win too, man. Tom, I want to die. All right. P.S. Ryan, I'm sorry I ate all your rice. And then Ryan said, why does a loving God cause such agony? We got a lot of negative emotions going on in the league right now. Hate to see it. This is all for fun, and it's sad to see that guys are having a rough time, wanting to win and just not picking up the dubs. Hopefully it'll come around for them, though. And then this week we don't have a league trade review, but we're going to talk about a massive trade in the NFL. We already mentioned it. Christian McCaffrey is going to the 49ers for a boatload of picks. The 49ers traded away all of their picks next year, basically, just for Christian McCaffrey. After a terrible game from Jeff Wilson, so much for Elijah Mitchell as well. He's supposed to be coming off the IR any time now. But for Christian McCaffrey, this could be huge. This could be a resurgence in his fantasy career. The 49ers and Shanahan, massive run-heavy offense with great schemes, and they constantly make mediocre running backs look top tier. And then with a dump-off king like Jimmy Garoppolo, at QB. He is poised to have a great rest of season. The only worry is that he stays healthy. Christian McCaffrey has had his issues with injuries in the past, and the 49ers have had issues with their running backs in the past. They have almost a curse, you might say, but this year their starting running back already got hurt, so hopefully that's it for the year, and we want to see Christian McCaffrey stay healthy. Love to see that guy play good. He is a stud when he's rolling. And then now, just a brief on yesterday's Thursday night game, Cardinals Saints. We had a great Thursday night game for once. I want to say the only other good Thursday night game was the first one of the year, but the Cardinal defense, clap it up. They led the Cardinals to a 42-34 win. They had 2 pick sixes and a third one just for insurance. But as for the offense, Eno Benjamin, he led the way. On the ground, he had 90 yards and a touchdown. Wow, guess who's back? Mr. P.E.D. D-Hop, 10 catches for 103 yards. Whew, that offense is scary once they get rolling. Imagine Marquise Brown coming back. They will be scary, especially if they have a coach who can call plays. Get Cliff Kingsbury out of the NFL. That guy, I don't know. I don't like him. And then opposite of them, the Saints, we have a little bit of QB controversy. We did say Andy Dalton threw 3 picks, but 4 touchdowns. He kept that team in the game, and he was missing 2 of his top 3 receivers in Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry. But those 4 touchdowns, and he had a whole ton of yards. He was spacing it out. 5 separate receivers had over 50, one of them being Chris Olave with 7 for 107. He is looking like a stud of a first-round draft pick by the Saints. And then also, tight end Jawan Johnson had 5 for 32 and 2 touchdowns. Weird to see a name other than Olave or Taysom Hill scoring touchdowns, but Jawan Johnson had 2 of them. And then, as we mentioned, Alvin Kamara, he just can't find the end zone. He is doing great in terms of touches and yards. He had 18 for 105, but he just can't find the pay dirt. Get that man in the end zone, and he will be a top 5 running back for sure. But Taysom Hill just loves to take those touchdowns whenever he can. He actually had one yesterday as well. And then now we're going to take a quick look at our matchups around the league. Craig's 5-1. Philly Lil Uzi Hurts are playing Tom's 3-3 Racing with Ruggs. Bailey's 5-1. McAfrican Americans are playing Reggie's 4-2 South Memphis Taint Destroyers. Some good matchups there. And we got Andy's 2-4 Shit Kings versus Johnny's 2-4 4 Loco for Life. And we got Ryan's 2-4, the worst team ever, versus Juice's 1-5 Team Laporte. That is a shit matchup indeed. Love to see that. 3 wins between those 2 guys combined. That should be a fun one. Then we're going to take a quick look around the NFL. As we all know, we're skipping that Thursday night game as we are recording on Friday. But Sunday at noon, we're going to start with Atlanta playing Cincinnati as both teams are looking to break even. Both of them sitting at 3-3. The Lions coming off bye. They are playing the Cowboys in Dak's return game. This should be a high-flying game, especially with DeAndre Swift coming back. That is one of my guys. I love to see him. Hopefully he is back and healthy for the rest of the year. Then we got an AFC South matchup, the Titans versus the Colts, as JT is coming back this week. We're going to have a good running back matchup, JT versus Derrick Henry. Then maybe the Packers can get back on track. They're playing Heineke's Commanders. That should be a surefire win for, an Aaron Rodgers-led team, but who knows? They have not been great this year. Then we got Tom Brady also looking for a return game to get back on track. He's looking to destroy the shell that is left from the Panthers roster. With C-Mac gone and DJ Moore unable to get the ball from the quarterbacks he has, there is not much talent there, and that should be a blowout. Then we have the 5-1 Giants looking to upset the Jags. The Jags are heavy favorites in this game. I don't get it. The Giants have proved that they are a team. They are 5-1. The Jags, meanwhile, are 2-4, and the Jags are favored 70-30 in this game. Makes no sense to me. Then we got this week's game of the week, AFC North showdown, Browns and Ravens. Both these teams have been having their own little struggles, but they are both very good teams, and they're both looking to get back on track after losses last week. Then we head into the afternoon. The Jets are going to play the Broncos. This is going to be a defensive snooze fest. And then the Raiders will play the Texans, where we see what bad team can get their second win this year. And then the Chargers are going to play the Seahawks, who surprisingly are 3-3. Go ahead, Geno Smith. Love to see it. Then we got the Chiefs playing the Niners, where we might see C-Mac in his new threads. That trade for him going down to San Fran happened yesterday on Thursday. So will he get involved in that game plan in only 3 days? We will see. I hope to see him just because I am excited to see Christian McCaffrey in a good offense for once. Then we got Sunday night, two young concussed quarterbacks, Kenny Pickett, Tua Tagovailoa, going at it. Steelers are playing the Dolphins. And then lastly, we got another terrible primetime game, Bears-Patriots. These primetime games are something else. And then this week we have our second round of byes. We have the Eagles, the Bills, the Vikings, and the Rams all sitting out. Those teams have a lot of studs, a lot of fantasy studs from those 4 teams. So hopefully everyone can fill in the voids left behind. And we're hoping for some good points this week in fantasy. That's going to do it for this week. We will see you next time.